I'm a simple hick from Southern Indiana that went to as well as you went to the gala for the 100th anniversary of APTA in Washington, D.C. in the National Cathedral. I look back, I'm like, how in the heck am I around all these people that are so successful and so brilliant? My imposter syndrome really sticks out in those situations. But like 100%, like the ability to advocate for what we do and to lead, but also lead with a heart of humility and know that we can be wrong, and I'm wrong a lot, and I failed, and that allows us the opportunity to really be successful in life and be real people and live authentic lives and know not every answer but the more we just talk about those things, the better it gets, and the more we can get involved and help our profession grow and help our association grow. And for you as a PTA, that's going to help you grow clinically. That's going to help you grow as a person. It's going to help you grow with whatever your goals are in the profession or within your career.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the PTA Plus podcast. Today's guest is Sean Bagby. Sean is a physical therapist assistant and athletic trainer, as well as a co-owner and COO of Rehabilitation and Performance Institute, or otherwise known as RPI. Sean and I have some great conversation today about leadership, about business ownership. We talk a lot about successes and failures in life. The reality is we're going to face failures, and as long as we can learn from those failures, typically things can turn out just fine. So I'm really excited for you to hear about Sean's journey into leadership as a physical therapist assistant. He has some really great advice for us. Sean is a self-proclaimed Disney nut, Star Wars geek, and unique is his jam, and I'm really excited for you to hear what Sean has to say today. So stick around for another episode, and we'll catch you soon. Thanks. Hey, Sean, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I'm glad that we were able to get some time together. We've been talking about getting you on the show for quite some time, but busy lives, and we both have busy families going on and everything. So I'm glad that we were able to connect and make some time to talk.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it. I love the podcast. I love listening to it. So hopefully I don't destroy your numbers.
Absolutely not. There's no way you can do that. And you have some really cool stuff that we're going to talk about today. I'm really excited. I think that PTAs that are listening are going to be able to derive a lot from some of your experiences, some opportunities that you've had. So I think that you have a great story to tell, and I'm excited that you were able to come on and tell us about it. So we're going to dive into all kinds of different things today, lots of different directions that we can take this podcast, but I'm going to go ahead and let you introduce yourself to everybody and tell us who you are, where you're from, and what you do.
Certainly. My name's Sean Bagby. I am a PTA first and foremost. I'm also a ATC, and then I have my master's in healthcare administration. My day job is I am a COO of a company that I helped co-found called Rehabilitation Performance Institute. We are a outpatient physical therapy company that has 13 clinics through Southern Indiana, Southern Illinois, and Western Kentucky. And then we've also got some unique niche practices where we do some industrial outreach. We do some physical therapy based out of a baseball school in one of our communities. And then we also are in a basketball school in another one of our communities. So we try to, the goal for us is to put therapists, and when I say therapists, it's PTs, PTAs, is to put therapists in the communities that they love to be part of and serve, and allow them to succeed by doing it that way. In my second job, I am an adjunct professor for St. Kate's University in their PTA program, and I teach their leadership capstone class. which is probably for any of my former students that are listening, they're probably like one of the most frustrating classes because it's all about living in the gray. It's not black and white. And so people struggle with that idea, but it is true to life and it's true to leadership. And it's something I actually love and adore. And it's an opportunity that came out of being involved with APTA and Holly Clinch from Minnesota, who is, one of my mentors and role models in life. And my next job that I work, I guess I got two more. The next job that I do is I teach in the Next Gen Institute of Physical Therapy. My COVID project, along with a friend of mine named Aaron Hoffman, we designed and built out a manual course specifically for PTAs. That is a online, but like it's a live course every 3 weeks, or live class every 3 weeks, and then you present videos to us, and we give you feedback on how you're doing mobilizations and things like that, and really try to do that because I want to push PTAs to work at the top of their practice. And then as we talked about practice, my last real job is I am on the licensure board for the state of Indiana. I'm the first PTA appointed onto the licensure board of physical therapy. And so I do that. And so like if you've never spent time watching your licensure boards work, it's a interesting phenomenon. It's all about protection of the public and protection of what we do from the aspect of not letting providers that aren't trying to do the right thing practice. And so you get to see a lot of the things that people do wrong, but you also get to see a lot of people that make mistakes and then change their lives and become really good therapists. So it's a rewarding experience, and it's one I'm glad I get to serve in.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, you got so much going on. I don't know how you do all of this.
Well, I mean, and so like it goes back to what we talk about at RPI. People talk about burnout in our industry a lot. Like for us, we think burnout occurs because like you're not rewarded, right? Like everything I do builds on each other and is a reward for like what I'm passionate about, which is taking care of people in our communities, within our profession and within our association. And like that's outside of my kids and my wife, that's what gets me up and going every day.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're married to a physical therapist assistant. And this is something that I just like learned about you, Sean. So I just think that's great. Like maybe you guys like do you go on vacation at like CSM or
No. We've been to one conference together, which was CSM in Indianapolis, and I was serving in the caucus at the time. And so I guess that's the other job, right? I was serving in the caucus at the time. And so like I had caucus stuff, but I was also involved with LAMP. I was the LAMP host because I do sit on the LAMP committee. I'm in charge of LAMP 301 projects. But at that time, I was getting my exposure to LAMP. I was taking my first LAMP course, but LAMP had wanted someone local to help set up things in Indianapolis. And like, it's one of those, you say yes to opportunity, right? I live 3 hours away from Indianapolis, but I sure made sure I knew where everything was in Indianapolis that LAMP was going to need, so I can make a very positive impression on that group. And like, that was one of those things that's the only conference my wife and I have ever gone to together. We are in two totally separate worlds. She's in acute care. I'm an outpatient. So like, when we talk, she talks about like, her decisions are where does someone go to get better, or when they're in stage of life. And mine is like, most of my people walk in. If they don't walk in, I have them walking. I make bad jokes all day long and I have fun. And so like they're two different worlds. But the other thing I forgot to add for you is my brother is a physical therapist as well.
Oh, really? This is like a family affair, huh?
Yeah, and and so at one point, my sister-in-law is a athletic trainer who at one point I worked with my brother and my sister-in-law all in the same practice. And my sister-in-law did physician extending and outreach athletic training for a group of orthopedic surgeons we worked for. But my brother and I worked together, and like we are 18 months apart and pretty competitive. And so like someone saw us together the other week because we live in totally different areas now. And he was giving me a hard time. He's like, it doesn't matter when you two get together, you just argue. And I'm like, well, I'm like, I can argue, but I can prove I'm better at what I do. So
I love it.
I'm really not conceited, but I will be in front of him.
I bet that there is a lot of competitiveness that goes
Yeah.
on there. So all fun things. So cool.
Yeah.
So something that I ask every guest is if you could fill in the blanks in the sentence, I am a PTA plus, and you've already filled in some of those blanks, but what else would you add to that list? So you have your PTA, you're an athletic trainer. Gosh, you're in leadership and you're teaching. Is there anything else that you would like to add to that list?
Well, the things that keep me sane is I am a watch nut. So I have a collection of watches and I'm constantly
Like wristwatches, like
yes, wristwatches.
yeah.
Like okay, so here is my small ones that sit in my office.
Get out.
This is my other passion, which is Disney, and those are my Disney watches. So I only wear those when I'm in the parks at Disney or on the cruise ship.
Wow.
So yeah, so those are my other two passions in life, which are watches. And watches go to like we don't need watches nowadays, right? Like you have your iPhone, you have your smartphone, whatever, like you can tell time there. But like to me, a watch is kind of what we do in therapy, right? It's about movement because like all the pieces have to integrally work together to produce a movement pattern that is accurate. And so like I'm connected to that. And then there was a book that I read years ago, Good to Great, that had a quote, be a watchmaker, not a time teller. And it's like anyone can tell you the time, but can you set up a system to get things accurate and produce results? And so like that's always been the connection. So like if I do have a watch addiction, and like the one thing I will spend money on outside of Disney is watches.
He's admitting there may be a problem, but no, I love it. And I love that analogy between watches and physical therapy. I never thought about it that way. I have one watch and I don't wear it. It's an Apple Watch, and I no offense, I don't love them. I mean, I wear it if I'm working out to track, but otherwise I don't wear it. But of course I'm not in a position where I need to like check a watch all the time. I don't have to like, I don't need something with a second hand or anything.
Yeah, no, but okay, so like this is gonna make me sound like the uber geek of the world. But yes, on my right wrist I have my watch, and then on my left wrist I have my Apple Watch.
Embrace it. Embrace it.
I mean, I wear my Apple Watch because I want the metrics. I want all the data that it gathers because it's like everything else. It tells a story. Like data tells a story. And so like the story of like how my day's going gets told with my heart rate and my glucose level and things like that, and it all gets on my watch, and I can easily check it.
That's awesome. So, watch fanatic, Disney fanatic. So, yeah.
The only other podcast I've ever done outside of you and Jimmy is a watch podcast.
No way.
Yeah.
I've got to find it. You're going to have to tell me which one it is. I'm going to listen.
Yeah, we went through my entire. So there's a watch dealer in Vegas who's become a friend of mine, and we went through every watch I owned at that point, and because every watch tells a story, right? Mm-hmm. Like so,
they're unique.
I have a watch that is from when I was awarded PTA of the Year. I have a watch from when we started the company. I have a watch from when we made our first profit, when we hit 5 years. I'm looking for one for our Ascend Award right now. I haven't decided on what I'm going to get, but I'm looking currently at that one.
That's great. I love it. I love it. I am serious about listening to the podcast because that's one of the things that I find that um, is important for me to do every day is to learn something new. And I'm kind of in a really busy season of my life right now, so I don't have as much time to read as I used to. And I like to read. I have a bunch of books behind me that I maybe have started and have not finished yet. But instead now, because I'm in this really busy time, is I try to listen to a podcast a day, and hear something new or learn something new. I have some podcasts that I listen to on a regular basis, but I also have some that I just kind of drop into and listen to like one episode and then move on. So I am serious about listening to it, and I'm going to find out.
I'll get it to you. But yeah, so like I listen to watch podcasts, physical therapy podcasts. And then like, oh gosh, I'll just go ahead and pull back the curtain. Like the one thing that like is like the weird thing that I just like listen to because I find it interesting are like real life like mystery like disappearances, murders, serial killers, things like that.
Yeah, like
I
true
have
crime.
no idea why, but it's interesting to me, like the psychology of the person
Yeah,
involved.
interesting. Yeah. Hey, go ahead.
Mhm.
Pull back that curtain.
I embrace my weirdness. That's part of who I am.
Take it. Take it and run with it. All right, Sean. So was it in your 5-year plan when you're in PTA school, like did you ever sit there and go, you know what? I want to be a business owner someday. Like, was that part of your 5-year plan or like where did that come from?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. No.
Yeah. No, it's so like the genesis of how we started this company is really a unique story, and I love it. Little background. So the three of us that started RPI, really were the founders of it. Craig Pfeiffer, who is our CEO, Shelly Tyler, who was our chief clinical officer. She just stepped away this year from us because she's got young kids and she's trying to do some things there. And like I miss her every day. She's an amazing person. And then myself, we were the three of us that were in charge of a PT department in a orthopedic physician practice. And so like everyone thinks that pops gets a bad names and like yeah, there's some bad pops out there, but like there are also really good ones. And so like the genesis of this company is like when I came on, I was the third member of the PT team. There were two physical therapists, and I was the first PTA. And the reason I got the job is because I was a dual credential. They really needed an outreach athletic trainer, and so like I had accepted a position up in Crystal Lake, Illinois. I had run into a former CI of mine who said, "You need to talk to my husband." I talked to him. I loved the conversation. I love the location. And like I left that interview going, this is where I need to be. And it's one of those times like I didn't even negotiate anything. It was just like, can I say yes fast enough when they offered me the job? And like, you know, don't ever do that, negotiate. But I said yes. I went to work there. I worked there for 6 years, and I kind of built myself and my brand up a little bit, and like I was known as like kind of the workhorse. So like if someone was behind, I was starting their patient. If the director got caught doing something for a physician or something, I covered everything. I put in some systems in place that made efficiencies better, not just for physical therapy, like EMR documentation, but I also like took over some ownership of work comp for the physician practice because I have a passion for people that get injured on the job because I think that's a really hard situation in life because you're losing money. You feel like no one's looking out for you, and a lot of times it's you're caught between two different worlds. You're caught between your job that is saying one thing because they're losing money and their insurance rates are going to go up, and you've got the physicians who don't necessarily understand work. And so physical therapy can bridge that gap because we can speak both languages. to the patient and to the physician well. And so I kind of took on that role and responsibility. Well, as we grew our staff to about, I think we had 40 PTAs, ATCs, and OTs at one point in 2 buildings for this practice. And the CEO at the time of, well, going back up, before that, like one of my biggest life lessons was like, you've got to be really strong about where you're going and things like that, and confident and know when a situation isn't right. And so the director at the time got offered a position in a different city, actually the city I live in. And he asked me if I was going to go with him. And I said, the only way I'm going to go with you is if I don't get your job here. And so I interviewed for that job. I was the most senior person to interview for it. The other person they interviewed for is the CEO of my company right now, RPI. So Craig and I both interviewed for this job. I lost the job to him, and I wasn't upset with Craig. I wasn't mad at anything like that. But I had to make a decision, like, was I going to stay or was I going to go? And so, like, 2 things occurred. I talked to the CEO of the physician practice, and I said, what was I missing? Because I really wanted to know, because I felt strongly that I was good enough to lead. And he said, honestly, there wasn't much difference. You both have a lot of strong qualities, and honestly, I think that's why Craig and I work well together, is we both have strong qualities, but they're in different ballparks. He's like, but they said they weren't sure if a PTA could lead a department of PTs. And so, like, at that point I knew, like, okay, I can't go with him because, like, he doesn't see me as someone who can lead. And then at the same time, I'm like, well, what do I do? So Craig and I had a real open talk that he's like, I know you've kind of got some decisions to make, but if you stay here, I want you to take over certain aspects of this. I want you to run it, and we'll call you the assistant manager for a little bit. And then, like, as that moved on, I went to become a manager. We kept growing the facility. We added a second facility. I was in with the design phase of that. And we just kept growing and growing, and more therapists. And the CEO of the physician practice came to EI and to Shelly, Craig, and myself and said, I want you guys to think about spinning off the rehab department and get me under 50 employees again. And you guys do everything your own way anyways. And he's like, I don't do anything with you really. Like, you guys run everything the way you see fit, which was kind of nice, because we were allowed to, like, be hands off, and we just ran it in the way that we thought was best for the patients and for ourselves. And so as we did that, we would sit down every Wednesday night and we would have sushi in a clinic that was totally closed, and the cleaning staff would be going room to room, and then they'd walk in on us and kind of look at us like, why aren't you leaving here so I can vacuum the floors? And so, like, we would spend every Wednesday night kind of like envisioning what a company should look like. What should be the principles? What should we care about as a company? And we never talked about profit. We never talked about anything like that. We talked about, like, what should it be to help the communities we serve, and what should it be to make sure that therapists have all the tools and everything they need to be successful. And so, like, we spent basically a year designing it. And so we designed that, and then as that occurred, one of the things that happened was the physician practice merged with another physician practice. And they brought in a consultant who said we ran a spa for therapists. We were too nice to our therapists. We didn't expect as much. And there's no way we could be as successful as we've been. And so they looked into everything. They started to let go of the 3 of us in senior position. So as they did that, we kind of, like, we'd already had everything set up. We had our first building we knew where it was, and yeah, we basically said part of what we wanted was we wanted a company that was going to be evergreen. So like one of the things we'd always done is like it shouldn't be just the three of us in ownership. We brought in all the other therapists that we knew were going to go with us and gave them opportunities. Like our goal was to take every therapist with us for that and to like take over those two clinics that we had, but that didn't happen. But we still definition of insanity is opening 4 clinics at the same time, and that's what we did. We opened 4 clinics pretty much within the same time span of each other over 7 years ago, and we've grown from those 4 to now 13.
Big audacious goals, right?
Well, so like our goal is to improve the health of the community we're in by 1% in the first 20 years. So if you look at the data, it's health, the community health gets worse every year. And so like our goal is that, and we really feel like physical therapy can be the driver for improving overall healthcare. But it starts with like flipping the mentality of like, you've got to see 20 patients and bill 70 units per hour.
Yeah. Yeah. So you have a lot of really sound principles that this company is built on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we did, and so like we've maintained that, and it's funny because like as you grow, like there's someone I really respect in the industry, and like I was talking to him, and he's like, "How many clinics you up to?" At that time, it's like 9, and he goes, "Huh, 10's where I usually see clinics start losing who they are." So like we really like that resonates in me, and I hear that multiple times a week. But we're a decentralized decentralized company, and we decentralized in a very specific reason. It's because like I've got to trust the clinic directors to make the right decisions, and I can't micromanage that many people. And if I micromanage it, am I really setting up a culture, or am I just like not living to what we believe? And so like we've spent a lot of time and a lot of practice of like setting up like the tent post of what's important to us, which are, taking care of people, taking care of the communities, and being advocates for what we do and our patients, and not spending money on frivolous things like taking physicians out to dinner and things like that. We just don't do it. Mm-hmm. So we really built it on that, but we spent a lot of times like making sure we have systems in place and really putting energy to the things that change practice for our physicians and our for our clinicians and our patients, but making sure that we don't waste time on the stuff that's not important.
Of course, yeah. And your company has been recognized for this. Like this, people see this about the integrity of the company that you are part of and that you are part ownership in. That's been recognized, and you just received an award, right? Your company?
Yes, and so we were invited as one of the finalists to the Ascend what is that conference hosted by WebPT last month, and we found out we won Practice of the Year, which is amazing for, you think WebPT opens it to any practice in the country, but like obviously like the 39,000 clinics that use WebPT is kind of the first that know about it and apply. And like some of the things that like set ours apart was that we really don't have staff turnover. We've only had 1 clinician leave us in the 7 years. And then we really, our net promoter score. So anyone not familiar with net promoter basically says like, on a scale of 0 to 10, how likely are you to recommend RPI to somebody else? If they score you a 8 or above, they're more likely to do it. 7, they're neutral. Anything less than seven, they're going to be a detractor for you, and not have anything positive to say about you. And so, like for healthcare, the average is right around 50% net promoter score. Physical therapy is a little bit better; it's in the 60s. We are, and this is something that gets calculated because we send this out multiple times to every patient. Like if we send it out after a vow, after a month, and then discharge, and then a month after discharge. And then we, if someone drops out of care, we send it to them too, because we want to track the real data. We want to see if someone drops out, why. And so like our score for the year was 93%. There are amazing clinics out there that I like idolize that were like 87, 88%. And those are huge in our industry. Scores, but like for us to be at 93 was just representative of like what we've tried to instill and what we've done.
Yeah.
And I'm extremely proud of that reward because I mean, I'm not really big on awards, but like this means a lot because it's recognized nationally on what we're trying to do as a small little company in Southern Indiana and Southern Illinois and Western Kentucky.
Well, you're making an impact. So congratulations to you and to RPI. That's amazing. And I'm really proud of you as well, Sean. You and your whole company. I mean, that takes a lot of work. I think I get a lot of questions from students, from PTA students about clinic ownership. And is this something that I can do as a PTA in the future? And in Ohio, the answer is yes. I know that varies per Practice Act, but I mean, it takes a lot of effort. Like you've put a lot into this. It didn't just happen overnight. So.
Right. And so like I get that a lot too. And I'm always willing to talk to any of your students that have that question. But like the thing that I think it starts with is it's not about owning a clinic. Start by owning your career. Know who you are.
Bingo.
Treat the way that patients need to be treated. And in ownership or not, you're going to find success. And like the one thing I talk about a lot in physical therapy is like physical therapy, we get too narrow sometimes. We think about physical therapy as this box. We treat in acute care, subacute, SNF, long-term, outpatient, pediatric school, whatever, right? But that's not always what physical therapy is. Physical therapy can be the physical therapist like Amy Lafko, who is a mentor of mine and wrote a great book on leadership called People First. Like Amy like ran physician practices and ER departments. And so like that's physical therapy doing it. There are examples I know of like a PTA, Brad, and I'm blanking on Brad's last name right now. Brad Gant, who is the practice administrator for a physician practice. He started out as a clinician and then showed that he had adept skills in managing people and moved up in a hospital system. And there's plenty of examples of that out there. And like, they're advocates for our profession, right? They're going to talk to physicians about why physical therapy probably should be used in some of these situations, which is what I think we have to do. But it starts by owning who you are and what you do, and like finding those niche practices where you can do what you want. Now, if that niche isn't there, by all means, go create it. And you can create it without being a physical owner. But you got to be willing to put in the time and effort because it doesn't happen overnight. Like for every yes you say yes to, there's a no that you say. And so like when I early on said yeses to in my career, it meant I sacrificed things like vacation, time off, being around friends all the time and things like that. And so like, but like there's a lot of things out there that talk about if you want to be successful, sometimes success can be a lonely journey until you find people that are willing to want to be successful with you. And then you find like this new tribe. And like when you find your tribe, that's where you'll find success.
Absolutely. And I think that I can't say it as eloquently as you just did, but that was one of the driving forces behind the name of this podcast, was because I wanted to highlight. Now, of course, I focus on PTAs, but I have PTs that come on this show too. But I wanted to highlight those things that make us more than simply a PTA. And the same for PTs as well. There's so much more to us than what you said. We tend to put ourselves in that box. Like, well, I work in outpatient. Well, I work in skilled nursing care. I work in acute care. We're so much more than that. It's so multifaceted. We care for our community and we serve in other ways. So that's really what I wanted to highlight with this podcast, was all those different pieces and parts of that watch that makes us PTs and PTAs.
Well, and so like it's the part where I have a hard time with people that go, the universal they did this to me. Like, my employer didn't allow X, Y, or Z, or my employer said I had to bill 7 units a visit, right? Like first off, a good employer shouldn't tell you to do that. Secondly, like, employment is voluntary, right? Like, you've got to find the situation that works for you and is ethical. I took the ethical risk of stepping away from a good paying job right out of school. And like, it was nothing wrong with that company. It was someone that asked me to do something that I think they didn't understand. But I wasn't willing to put licensure on the line for myself after I'd worked so hard to get my licenses.
Absolutely.
And so, like, if you own your career and you can create those things, like, people are going to find you and you'll do it. And like, when we were starting RPI was a great example of like connections I made, because we were really quiet about, or I was personally really quiet about starting RPI before we opened our doors and before I went there, because I actually didn't technically work in a clinic for 3 months until we needed someone. So I took like an in-between job. But like, when I left my previous employer, because I had owned my career to that point and had become a decent leader, like, I got phone calls from Indianapolis. Hey, come up here. We don't need a PTA, but I need someone to run this portion of our clinic. We need help in this part of our hospital. Would you be wanting to do this? Will you come to South Bend? And like, I had opportunity from my network who knew what I could do as far as work-wise and drive-wise. And so, like, own your career and you'll find ways to be successful. And if ownership of the company is what you want to do, then don't let anyone ever tell you no. Just find the way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. Great advice. Now, I can't remember if we already talked, because you and I had this whole conversation before we even hit record about a bunch of other different things too. But it was maybe your fourth job that you talked about, and that was PTA engagement. So you're part of the caucus and the council, but like, you've had a lot of opportunity to kind of serve in some of these leadership roles and engage PTAs. So like, what makes that so important to you to engage PTAs, and how did that spark for you? Like,
Yeah.
what was it that made you want to do that?
So two events occurred. The first event was, like I said, I wasn't selected as the leader of the department. And so, like, when that happened, I'm like, I got to grow my personal leadership skills. And John Kelly had reached out and was looking for someone to run for PTA caucus rep for Indiana. And again, I said yes, not knowing what I was doing and like how much of a ride that would be for my life. Mm-hmm. But it really was like the right yes at the right time. And secondly is TRICARE would not let PTAs bill for services provided. And my grandmother was a TRICARE patient, and I thought that was a bunch of BS. And so like, that started me on the advocacy front. And so like, it took me 17 years to get that passed. And of course, like, the biggest win I had as a PTA in in payment. I had a couple others that I was part of, like Walmart and Lowe's and some other companies. But like the biggest thing that I'm like, oh, this is like the coolest thing that we got this accomplished with the caucus, and like our input in this and our advocacy. And then COVID kind of took sales out from that because it happened at the same time COVID occurred.
Took the sales out of a lot of things, yeah.
Yeah,
But
I know, right? But I'm like, that came out in the APTA magazine in like March of when COVID hit. I'm like, great, no one's ever going to read this.
not true. Your work is important.
But so like those two events started me on that leadership journey, and the caucus was indescribable for me advancing as a leader. I talk about it all the time. Like, I got to serve on the MEL task force, which is the member engagement and leadership development task force. I served on the first one of those. I got to serve on the PTA PTA board work group, which was comprised of APTA board of directors members and then some of us PTAs. And like that has been the impetus for change within the association for PTA's voting rights and service, which, I'm seeing come to fruition now. Mm-hmm. And, like leadership and service has just led me to like so many things. Like, I'm a simple hick from Southern Indiana that went to the, as well as you went to the gala for the 100th anniversary of APTA in Washington, D.C. in the National Cathedral. And like, I look back, I'm like, how in the heck am I around all these people that are so successful and so brilliant? Mm-hmm. Like, my imposter syndrome really sticks out in those situations. Mm-hmm. But like 100%, like the ability to like advocate for what we do and to lead, but like also lead with a heart of humility and know that like we can be wrong, and I'm wrong a lot, and I failed, and like that allows us the opportunity to like really be successful in life and be real people and live authentic lives and know like not every answer we know, but the more we just talk about those things, the better it gets, and the more we can get involved and help our profession grow and help our association grow. And for you as a PTA, like that's going to help you grow clinically. That's going to help you grow as a person. It's going to help you grow with whatever your goals are in the profession or within your career.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it increases that value. And I was talking to another PTA a couple weeks ago who said, if you don't see yourself as valuable, then why do you expect anybody else to see you as valuable either? So to me, that engagement has been very it's helped me grow. It's pushed my boundaries of things that I thought I could do or wanted to do. I can tell you right now, this podcast wouldn't have existed had I not applied to a volunteer position. Oh gosh, it's been 8 years ago now, I think, to be part of the Centennial Steering Committee. Had I not put in an application to say yes to volunteerism, none of this would have ever started. And I agree with you, that imposter syndrome. I remember the first meeting I was at APTA, and in comes in Sharon Dunn and Justin Moore, and I'm sitting around this table with all these incredible minds in physical therapy as the only PTA at the table. And I remember thinking to myself, I don't belong here. What am I doing? How am I here and I don't belong here? And that was changed with the work and the people that I was working with and the way that they brought me in and they took me under their wing. And of course you belong here. And do you know what's happening and how you can become involved? And here, let me show you this. And boy, did they just take me in. And it was just an incredible journey, and great friendships I've built through volunteerism and the association. I mean, you know this, like these people are your family now.
Yeah.
You text these people on a daily basis. You build your
tribe. And so like, even just to build on that, first off, when we're off air, I've got a great Sharon Dunn story for you.
Okay.
Sharon Dunn Amy Smith and myself in a bar.
Oh no.
One of the funniest conversations I've ever heard.
Oh gosh. Yeah. Okay.
But but like you're exactly right. And like a personal experience that kind of really brings that to light for me is about 5 years ago, I was gonna run for chief delegate against David Harris. And we were getting ready to do it. We'd gone through everything. And about a month before the election, my father died. My father had a appendicitis, and his appendix ruptured right as they were doing surgery. He called me on the Thursday morning. He's like, I'm having pain in my shoulder. And like I looked at it and he said something else. And I felt his side and it was rock hard. I'm like, hey, your shoulder, it's your appendix. So I sent him to the ER. He ended up getting his appendix out on Thursday. They kept him in because it had broken right as they got in there surgically. And so they left a tube in to drain for a couple days. And so he got out of the hospital on a Saturday morning. He called me. He's like, my son was playing football. He's like, I'm coming to see Noah's game. I'm like, no, you're not. You got a tube sticking out of your gut, and it's on an artificial field full of MRSA and other bacteria. And it's 95 degrees. I'm like, you're not coming to the football game. Just go home, rest. There are plenty of games for you to see. Well, that night he throws a blood clot and he passes. So that's the last conversation I had with my father, which is really hard when my son's now playing high school football to an extent. Told you I'll be real on this stuff. But like the caucus was amazing because I look up at my father's visitation and David Harris had flown in from out in Washington to be there. Chris Garland had driven up. Amy Smith had sent stuff. Like Jane Jackson had been there for me during the entire time. And like there's so many of those people that like it will tear me up right now that I think about like they are the ones that have made me a better leader because I've learned from all their leadership styles and things like that. But they're also like they have become, as I talked about on that journey, like when you're trying to be successful, you have to find other people that are willing to put in the work too. And like getting to know those people and like getting to meet like the younger generation. And like it's one of the first conversations I had with you in the house. I remember it to this day. It's like, I know you're going to run this at one point. I know you can be very successful at it. Just don't give up and keep trying and push. And honestly, like there's so many people I'm so proud of to say they're my friends and my family, and like I have a deep bond for them that like I'm in contact with Sanaz and all these other people multiple times a week. And like, I don't think I would have as full a life if I didn't have that type of relationship.
Absolutely. And I think that that's what brings us back, right? I mean, because yeah, leadership and some of the opportunities that you've had and I've had, it takes you away from your family. It takes time. I mean, how many meetings do we spend in the evenings, like
Yeah.
online and chatting and back and forth? And when you serve on the caucus or now the council, many of us serve multiple roles. So we're serving our state. I serve Ohio, but I also serve nationally. It takes a lot of time. But I think what keeps bringing us back is that it's filling. You really are getting something out of it other than just giving of your time. We're building those friendships. We're building those networks. We're building that tribe that continues to push you and see it through and follows up. And we don't let each other down. We hold each other to high standards. And I think that that's incredibly important. And that's what brings us back.
Yeah, 100%. And it's a big driver in what I do and why and if anything, I want PTAs to know like there is this like shining light of successful PTAs that are out there. Just find us and we'll help you, because like I know 99% of them have the same personal code as I do of like, I'm not that good, but I want the next generation to be better. That's why
Absolutely.
I teach. That's why I do things, is because like the new grads are going to be so much better than I ever was
Yeah.
clinically,
Hmm.
personally, and like that's
Plant
what
the
I want.
seeds.
I want to leave that mark. You know,
Absolutely.
I'm a Hamilton guy, and so like there's two songs that constantly run through my head. One is nonstop because that's how I live my life, and the other is the closing song where it's uh, Washington's talking about planting the garden that no one gets to see.
Hmm.
And so like, yeah, those are things that kind of like run through my head constantly.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you and I, we're not going to serve in our roles forever. And we want to make sure that we've planted the seeds for the next group that's going to come and take the torch and run with it. And we know they're going to do well. So
100%.
you are a rock star, Sean. You have so many things. As a matter of fact, you're one of the first PTAs that I met at CSM, and you probably don't even remember this, but
I do remember it.
so, I knew that there was a handful of PTAs that were there, and I think I went to the town hall meeting, and I know I met you, I met Jody, our Jody. Oh, she was so amazing. And Amy, and I'm pretty sure Joanne was there, but a lot of folks that I met that I remember watching you guys and the way that you talked and the way that you carried yourself, and I was so impressed. And it just filled my heart because I'm like, I love seeing PTAs take this and run with it, and again, just holding ourselves to a higher standard. It was just incredible. So I don't think you know the impact that you've had on me. So I appreciate that.
Well, thank you so much. But like, again, like it's what we go to talk about, service. Like you get so much more out of it, and like I can't even tell you about like the amount of times that those things matter, and like we do hold ourselves to a higher standard because like I want to prove to society what the worth of a PTA is.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, Sean, you've told us about a lot of things that have worked out good, but what about things that don't work out? Like, you know,
Failures,
what
man.
does failure look like for I don't know, a business owner, a PTA? Like, tell us about adversity.
Yeah, well, I mean, like so I'm a big proponent of Angela Duckworth and her talk on grit and the book on grit. And like I think grit is important. But I think like deciding that you have a personal tenacity to like not accept no, right?
Hmm.
And like failure occurs, and failure is going to occur in everything, but it's like, does failure define us, or do we re-up and go at it again? And so like, you know, personally I fail all the time, and like I fail in my leadership of clinic directors all the time. And when I was younger, I used to always make the mistake of giving someone an answer, and giving them an answer for the sake of giving them an answer. Because like when you start out young as a manager, that's what happens. You think you should have every answer, and you give an answer, and then you find out it's wrong, and you lose trust from somebody. And it can take a long time to repair trust. And so like that was one of the biggest life lessons I ever learned, was like, don't be wrong, be quiet. And so it took me a long time to learn how to be quiet and to listen to me talk right here. And you're gonna have a hard time believing I'm really like this shy introvert that struggles talking with people. But I learned from like giving the wrong answer a couple times early on as a manager, that I need to step back anytime a question's asked me and not give an answer right away.
Hmm.
And so as I progressed from being like a manager to a leader, what I learned along that journey was that I no longer needed to answer questions, but I need to answer with another question. But it's got to be a good question, right?
Hmm.
So I spend time reading about like good questions and things like that. And so I ask a lot of whys now. And like when you do that and you allow someone to come up with their own solutions, you're going to find out that like they're going to do a lot better than we ever would had we just quickly and hastily made a decision that we thought was right at the time. And so those are like the things that made. As a business, one of the biggest failures we ever made was cost us about $100,000. We when we started, we had a billing company that was doing our billing for us. And what we found when we were starting to leave them and bring it all in-house, because we wanted to control the conversations that were occurring, and that like when we talked to patients about like bills and things like that, that there was never a pressure that like, hey, we'll set you up on a payment plan, we'll do whatever, but like none of this pressure that comes from a lot of third-party billers, because they're being paid based on the money they collect, right? So their job is to get in as much cash as humanly possible. And so what we found is like when we were billing out things, there could have been an error on a claim, and because they wanted volume, they were about getting the volume out, not necessarily correcting bad claims. And so when we figured it out, we made a about $100,000 mistake in our choices. And so like we changed that and went to internal billing and allowed us to control the conversations that was occurring with patients and really live what we're about, which is taking care of people and like people will pay you if they think and they know that you're honest about like, hey, you know, insurance has this deductible, we have to collect it. If not, we're in violation of an insurance contract, which could be a very serious thing for us. But we can take that payment over time if we need to, or we can do whatever we need to do to help you have the time to pay your bill. And we're understanding, and we do things like that. And like people will pay you in those situations when they can. And so like it's a matter of like, you know, like we started out with a business decision that made our business life probably a little easier, but it ended up costing us because it wasn't the right thing for what we do. And it wasn't the right thing for our patients at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's a lot we can learn from our mistakes, right?
Yeah.
And a lot we can learn from failure.
Yeah. And learning that it's okay to fail, right? Like it is totally okay. But honesty is what has to occur with it. It's like, you know, I'm starting a new process with our clinic directors. And like, I think it's going to be successful, but like, I'm having individualized meetings with all of them. And like, one of the things I say is like, I need to know this isn't working for you, because like, I'm taking a shot in the dark here. And I think this is what you guys need. And I think it's what you're telling me you need from your feedback, but I don't know. And I could be wrong. And like, I'm not going to keep like trying to reinvent it if I'm wrong, but I'm going to find a way to correct it if I can. And if I get it right,
Absolutely.
great. But we're gonna have to see first. And so like I just try to be as open and honest and like, am I gonna get it perfect? Nope. But I'm gonna figure it out along the way.
Yeah. That's great. Great advice. Good advice.
Thank you.
Sean, something that I found interesting, I'm hoping you will tell us a little bit about this, but did you tell me that a patient saved your life one time?
A therapist saved my life.
A PT saved your life one time.
PT saved my life. And so
not to change like subjects, but
no,
this is
no. So I've missed 2 House of Delegates in the last 15 years. The first one I missed was 5 years ago. And what occurred was I had gone to Disney because that's where I go to relax, and anyone thinks I'm nuts, but like I can walk 20 miles a day at Disney and it's the most relaxing time in the world for me. Like I've done all 4 parks by myself. Like when we had house in Orlando, I stayed an extra day just so I could go to all 4 parks. When Jody won her PTA of the Year award, she and I had tickets for an after night event that her husband, myself, and I all went to after we went out to dinner for her PTA of the Year award. We went to Disney. It was the most interesting ride because we got the only Uber driver in Orlando that didn't know where Disney was.
Oh
And
my goodness.
I kid you not, like
Newbie.
we're like, come on, get us to Disney, because she's as big a Disney nut as I am, and because we had, like, Brenda and I ran a Disney 5K together, and Jody, Brenda, and I were gonna do a Disney 5K together, probably last year, but obviously she got sick. Um, so like I had been there. I picked up a infection on my leg, which I went to my physician. He popped it. He thought it was MRSA. And this is the week in between me going to Disney and the House of Delegates. So he pops it. He's like, I wanna put you in the hospital and start you on IV antibiotics. I'm like, did you miraculously lab test it and know it's MRSA? No, but I have a guess. I'm like, well, your guess isn't always right, is it? And like, my physician is my neighbor, and like I know him personally too, and like I trust him with everything, but he's like, no. I'm like, well, why don't we culture it and wait until we know what it is? Because I don't really want to just be hit with high dose antibiotics if it's not treating what the issue is. And he's like, okay. So he starts me on Bactrim, and lo and behold, I'm allergic to Bactrim. So within 36 hours of taking Bactrim, didn't know I was allergic to Bactrim. My wife had came home from working that day. I wasn't really able to talk. I wasn't able to walk. She took me to the ER. I had a blood glucose of 1500 and an O2 of 68. Well, my wife kept me off the vent. Thank goodness. And so I was in acute kidney failure from the medicine. And so like the acute kidney failure went away. They labeled me as a diabetic. They then had like 7 months where they couldn't quite figure out, are you a type 1? Are you a type 2? Are you a late onset type 1? And all this stuff. So it took them a while to finally figure out the type of diabetic I am. And like I had an A1C like 2 months before and was not diabetic. And so like it just, from the acute kidney failure, caused everything to kind of like surge in my body. And so like now I'm labeled as a diabetic. And so the wound on my leg had gotten down to about a pimple size, but it would not totally close. And so I was going into wound care with a physical therapist. I'd been with her for a while. We got in really close, but it just wouldn't close up. And so like she's poking around one day, and she kind of like feels a tunnel, and she's like, I don't like this. I don't think there's really anything, but I want to get you in with a surgeon. And so she went and talked to the chief of surgery at this hospital. And I had called independently and got on. And again, a connection, right? The PTA caucus rep for Indiana at the time was Rochelle Hawkins. Rochelle's sister-in-law is a vascular surgeon in this practice. Well, this practice was very, very like tightly booked, and they weren't going to see me for like 2.5 months. And so I called Rochelle, and Rochelle's like, made a call, and she got me in with her sister-in-law. Her sister-in-law was going to see me and then pass me to a general, because she knew that's what I probably needed, wasn't vascular, but a general surgeon to look at it. But this physical therapist like kept pushing the chief of surgery to get me in. And so like he was getting pressure from both sides. And so like he got me in, saw me, and he's like, the hair follicle didn't come out from where the infection started. And he's like, I'm going to fit you in on this day. I'm going to fit you in between cases. It's going to be 5 minutes. We'll be in and out. And like my father had just died from post-operative care. And I'm like, I don't want to be knocked out. And he's like, that's fine. I'll use a local. It won't be any big deal. And so we go in for surgery, and he opens it up, and he finds that like I had necrotic tissue from my medial hamstring to my inguinal ligament.
Wow.
A little bit of a distance, right?
Wow.
And so like if she hadn't pushed, if Kathy hadn't pushed, yeah, no, they like if she would have just been like, okay, we can wait a couple months. There's no way I think that like something doesn't become septic and I don't pass.
Wow.
So like I'm
What a
eternally
story,
grateful for her.
Sean.
So I will say that like my first day of wound care, after so like he surgically debrides all that area. I stay in the hospital for a day. He packs it with a wound vac, and we do a bunch of like CT scans to make sure that like the infection hadn't spread anywhere to any place else. I get out of the hospital. I'm on a wound vac, and I go in for my first wound vac change, and I'm in there, and you know how wound care therapists are. They're not exactly normal people, anyways. Um, and this is in my wife's department. So, like I said, my wife works acute care. I'm having this done in her hospital, and so like everyone's seeing my butt, everything like that. I'm like, there's no more pride I have in my life of ever facing my wife's coworkers again without them like having seen my wound. And so the therapist that's in there is like, do you want to see a picture of it? I'm like, no, I don't. And so like she's unpacking and she is like elbow deep, and she takes a picture of herself elbow deep in my wound, unpacking it, and then finally shows it to me on the day because I said I'm like, I'll just take a look on the day I'm discharged.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and so like she showed me that on the day of discharge. I'm like, I'm glad you find that humorous.
Wow. Oh
But
my
yeah,
gosh, Sean, what a story.
yeah. So
But
I'm
had you not
incredibly
had your
grateful.
connections, man, that could have ended a lot different for you if you'd
Yeah,
not had, yeah,
yeah.
all
And if
those
I didn't have a
people.
therapist advocating for me in that situation too, like that's a big, big thing.
Absolutely. When we find ourselves as the patient, it really changes our perspective on how we issue care and how we are doing our jobs day to day. Because it's not we're not typically the patient, right? You know,
Right.
and when we're in that position, man, it changes everything. And our eyes are open to a lot of the failures in our healthcare system as well.
Yeah. And so, like I said, I missed two House of Delegates. Second House of Delegates was this year. And I had gotten sick in the start of summer with like a little virus. Didn't think anything of it. Like a week after the virus, had checked my blood pressure. My blood pressure was really high. It was like 175 over 125. And that was unusual for me. And so I called my doctor. We switched blood pressure medicines, and the blood pressure medicine worked. It lowered it, but then I started having edema. And lo and behold, long story short, like I gained 100 and some odd pounds of fluid in a short couple month period. And we couldn't figure out what was going on, and we started Lasix on days I was non clinical, and went like that, and which was fine. And I started to lose a little bit of weight, but I woke up one day with a heart rate of 178 beats per minute. And at that point, I was like, "There's something else wrong." And so I went in to ER. I ended up having congestive heart failure, and I had fluid in my lungs and on my heart, and then everywhere else, obviously. And so I was in the hospital for 2 weeks on diuretics constantly, got that all under control. And right now I get to wear a lovely life vest, external defibrillator. So if anyone's never had the fun and enjoyment of wearing one of those, let me tell you how much you sleep at night when they're like, hey, if that goes off for 30 seconds, it's going to shock your heart. You sleep really, really crappily because you're
Oh,
like, if you hear the sound,
yeah.
and like the thing is that like if you're conscious you don't need it. If you're unconscious and it's starting to go, like it's going to shock you, you need it. And so like you wake up and you're like, let me reset this, I don't want it to go off. And so you live that. But like again, it's another example of like I saw the healthcare system being so fractured because surgeons not talking to each other, surgeons changing things every day, everyone giving me a different opinion. When you're in the hospital for 14 days and you're having multiple procedures done and you're having different things done, and we were talking about this a little bit before being on air, is I'm having a cardiac cath done, and I'm watching on the monitor, and the physician is talking about where he's going for dinner that night. And, this is what he does all day, and I trust, but like, he's got a probe in my heart. And I'm like, this is really the time I want you locked in and concentrating, not having conversations.
No.
And so like it goes back to why we formed this, why RPI is in existence, is we feel like healthcare can be better by focusing on the patient and focusing on the providers. And so like that's what I want. And that was a reminder of that. But like I had great care, but like the system's just fractured so much that I think we can make it better if we get back to treating patients the way they need to be treated.
Amen. That's great. Well, we're glad that you are doing better and you're healing and you're on your path to health and wellness, and we'll definitely be looking for you at the next event. So we're not going to let any of that other stuff hold you back next time, right?
Nope.
Great. So Sean, why don't you tell us what your plus point is for today? Maybe if you have, I don't know, a wish for physical therapist, physical therapy, physical therapist assistants, some secret sauce you want to tell us, anything. Why don't you give us your plus point?
The thing is, like, and I've already talked about it, own your path, own your career, own who you are, own what you do. There's so many people that will give you wonderful insight, and there's wonderful like people out there that give you so much free education. This podcast is one of them. Jimmy with his podcast is one of them. Follow the Will Butlers of the world, follow the Jerry Durhams, the Ben Fungs. Like, there's so much information that if you take it and use it, you can make yourself better, you can make the clinicians around you better, and you can do more. But we have to be active participants in our careers, in our lives. You can't live a passive life. If you are passive throughout all this, others are going to make the decisions for you, and you're going to be unhappy at the end of the day. But if you are an active participant in what you do and you make your decisions, whether at the end of the day you can say like that was the ultimate, like, most successful thing I've done or not, it doesn't matter, because you created your own journey and your own path. And I can guarantee you, when you create your own journey and path, you will be successful. So just go forward and do that.
Absolutely. Great. Sean Bagby, that was wonderful. Thank you so much. Where can we find more information about RPI?
Well, RPI's website, so www.rehabilitationperformance.com is the big one. You can follow us on Instagram. We've got an Instagram for all of our clinics. I'll put a plug in for our best Instagram person, which is the baseball DPT, Jake Sullivan, who is one of our employees and an awesome therapist, and does just wonderful job treating throwers. And like, here's a great story. He treated my little league coach, who's in his 70s, still pitches. I'm not joking. I'm not joking. He reached out to me in July saying, I've got this rotator cuff tear, but they want to do surgery. But he's like, if I do surgery, I can't throw in my last this adult World Series in October in where was it? In Arizona. I'm like, I can treat this, but like, Jake's going to be far superior at treating you. And Jake treated him, and I was in the hospital, and I get a text from him, and he didn't know I was in the hospital or anything like that. And he's like, I just want to tell you, like, my fastball is about 5 miles per hour faster than it's been in the last 5 years. I'm throwing harder. Jake knew what he was doing, and like, Jake does amazing work. But like, that is typical from all of our therapists. Jake's just the best about putting it on Instagram. But like, he is amazing. So if you want to follow any type of overhead throwing, check Jake's stuff out. But then RPI is all over Instagram and things like that. Me personally, you can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram, or reach out to me off my email, and I'm willing to have a phone conversation with anyone. When I drive to the clinic, I got 2 1-hour drives. So I will talk to anyone about anything you want to know about physical therapy. That's what I do, and it's what I like doing the best.
And that is not a lie. You called me one time a couple years ago and you're like, "Hey, I want to run some ideas by you." And sure enough, we got on the phone and we chit-chatted. So that is not a lie. Sean is there for you. Great. Well, thank you so much for coming on today, Sean. I appreciate it. So much information. You're doing amazing things. You're a rock star, and we appreciate you taking the time to talk.
Well, thank you. And like I said, I'm just a shy hit guy from Indiana that just is passionate about what we do.
Absolutely. I love it. All right, Sean, we'll talk soon.
All right, bye.
The PTA Plus podcast is hosted and produced by Katie Sutton in collaboration with PT Podcast host and CEO Jimmy McKay. Thank you for listening to another episode of the PTA Plus podcast, where the conversation is for PTAs by PTAs. This show is for educational purposes only and not intended for clinical decision making. While care is taken to ensure accuracy, factual errors can be present. Become part of the PTA Plus podcast family by liking, sharing, and subscribing on iTunes, Spotify, and anywhere you can listen to podcasts.